Raw and Nerdy.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Raw and Nerdy. This is episode number 65. I am Joe the Widget, and I am joined by my fellow co-host because Rook is out today. It's his work weekend, which he has to do every now and then, and we always miss him when he does. I am joined by my fellow co-host, the man himself, Archon.
What's up, everybody? Rook did still put in his partial list for the PlayStation this week, so we will still get you that. So you will still know the games that he loved to play on PlayStation, even though there's not very many.
For those of you who don't know what we've been doing a series called Gaming Through the Ages, where we started with the Atari 2600 and been moving our way up through the history of gaming. Because all your hosts here are big gamers, and we've been through most of these generations. I have been through every one of them, sadly. I think Rook is the same way about PlayStation as I was with Sega.
Yeah.
Didn't play it much. Wasn't interested. I was a big Nintendo fan at that time, so I completely ignored Sega, which I regret in my later days, but...
Yeah, he said that he was more, like, during this era, he played the Nintendo 64 more. So, When we do that next week...
Even though it came out a year later...
I think the Nintendo 64 is next week.
Yeah.
So when we do that next week, he'll be more into that one, because he was more of a... See, I was both, so...
Yeah, I got a N64 when I went to college, about 3 years after it released, and played the snot out of it during that time, along with my PlayStation. So I have a good list I can bring up for that as well.
Oh yeah, I'll have a story when it comes to that, because when I got my Nintendo 64, it was crazy.
When it comes to like my favorite systems of all time, SNES and PlayStation are almost neck and neck tie. It's just NES has some more memorable games for me, so it squeaks up above it a little bit, but PlayStation's a very close second.
SNES was big for me. PlayStation 1 was pretty big for me. PlayStation 2 was huge, though.
PlayStation was huge for everybody. It's like one of their biggest selling consoles of all time was the second
PS2.
one.
Yeah, PS2 was huge for me. I played the PS2
PlayStation, buddy. Did you know that PlayStation is the lowest selling console in PlayStation history?
PlayStation 1?
Yep.
I believe it, yeah.
And yet...
Because it came out right about the same time as the Nintendo 64. So
a year prior to it, yeah.
Yeah, it had a little bit of time, but the Nintendo 64 just seemed to be more popular. I don't know why, but it was.
PlayStation was the first console in history of any type to ship over 100 million units.
But PlayStation 1 was also the first of its kind. Like,
yes.
Nintendo had a track record. People knew the Nintendo system was good. They'd never heard of this PlayStation. Like, it's made by Sony, so it might be good. So they didn't really know about it. And yeah, so
my little story with the whole PlayStation thing. I was 16 and had just gotten my first job. I was a cook at a pizza parlor, so I was making pizzas, and I was saving up money. I made $6.25 an hour back then. That was my first job.
A lot of hours.
I was ecstatic for it. I worked 4 nights to 5 nights a week, part-time, because I was in high school. But I saved up every penny I could, and I was going to buy myself a console. And I was so excited. It's the first one I was going to be able to buy for myself. And I saved up like $400. And I remember going at my best friend's house. We'd constantly argue about which one to buy. We knew that N64 was coming out. I was a big Super Nintendo nerd. So that one was the first one on my radar. But then this new system came out called the PlayStation. And I started seeing ads for it. And a lot of friends at school were getting all excited about it because they got it. And they were talking about it constantly. And then I saw an ad for Final Fantasy VII. My mind was blown. So that made up my mind right then and there. 3 months before the N64 released, I went and bought my PlayStation with my own money for my first time ever.
Mine was similar. I didn't get one right away. I got one, I want to say it was a year or two after it came out.
Yeah.
But I was at a friend of mine's house, and PlayStation used to come with these little demo discs.
Yes.
And one of the demos they had on it was Final Fantasy VII, and I played Final Fantasy VII, and I was like, I have to have this system because I must play this whole game.
Yes.
Because I was a huge fan of Final Fantasy 3, so...
I never played Final Fantasy before 7.
And to be honest, I've been playing one of the games I played a ton on regular Nintendo was Final Fantasy 1, so like I've been playing all the Final Fantasies... The American releases, at least, up until this point. And then 7, I saw that, and I was like, my jaw dropped, and I was just like, oh. And oh my gosh, I just realized I forgot a game on my list, and I don't know where to put it.
Oh no.
All right, we now have 4 honorable mentions because this game cannot not be in here.
I didn't do any honorable mentions. I've been sticking strict to that for myself, not doing them, even though I could have had probably about 15.
I couldn't. There's too many PlayStation games. Let's put it this way, okay? Everybody on this show knows by now a trend when it comes to me. And I could not put Final Fantasy Tactics on my list because there's so many good games on my list right now that Final Fantasy Tactics couldn't make my list. So that should tell you.
It made mine. I did my
couldn't.
list. See, we were talking before the show, and I was looking at a list of like 300 games that like the most popular PlayStation games. PlayStation had way more than that, but I played probably 250 of that list and knew about the other 50.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
So the games that made my top 10 are literally based on the amount of time and obsession I had over these games.
Same. And Tactics still couldn't make my list, which is amazing.
It made mine
insane.
because I have a little interesting story about that I'll talk about when I get to that on my list. I have a bunch of stories with these games, so it's going to be a little bit longer of a list for me to talk about. But
nice. Cool.
Yeah. A lot of some of my best gaming years occurred during the PlayStation era. And a bowling game almost made my list, believe it or not, for PlayStation. Because me and my family spent hours playing that game.
Now, I said that no more sports games were going to make my list. One of these games on my list is you could technically consider it a sport.
I was just going to say the same thing. I have one that could be technically considered a sport on mine.
I don't consider it a sport.
It might be the same one.
It could be because it's an amazing game. So we'll see.
I don't know. I spent my life playing that game.
We will see.
Yeah, I have literally stories about every single game on this list, especially a couple of them that most of you probably haven't heard of. But after this episode, I hope you have started hearing about it and started looking it up because it's absolutely amazing and it makes Pokemon look like child's play.
Well, let's put it this way, Kay. I guess I would say it is a sport because it's in the Winter Olympics. The game I'm talking.
Then it's probably not the same one we're talking about.
Maybe not.
No, you'll see. It's interesting.
I think I might know the one you're thinking of, but if it is, I would have that game on a different system.
Okay, because it was multi-launched, multi-platform, so that's quite possible. Before we get into that, really quick, the only news we have is the Switch 2, and I know my boy Archon here is a big Switch fan.
Yes.
So we had to bring it up, and I actually might buy a Switch when the Switch 2 releases because the price of it's going to drop down a lot.
Are you going to buy a regular Switch?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
touch a Switch 2 at first because they're going to be way overpriced, and yeah, I just want. There's like 3 games on the Switch I really want to play, and that's it.
The only reason why I would tell you to do the other way is because unless they drop the price a lot, it's only a little bit higher priced, and it's fully backwards compatible, so you can play all the regular Switch games on the Switch too.
I read that too. But the thing is,
which kind of makes it.
The price is, from what I've been hearing, is going to be $150 more than the Switch when it releases.
But for $150 extra dollars, you get all the Switch 2 games and all the Switch
I could take that $150 and buy all the 3 games I wanted.
I guess.
I don't have a lot of money right now, thanks to my job. I'm going to rant about my job a little bit tonight because it's frustrating, and I hope they hear it.
Well, as he said, the Switch 2 was revealed. They finally gave us some information on it. They finally let us see it. I think it looks great. It looks a lot like the regular Switch. It looks a lot like a regular Switch, but it is significantly bigger. Like, you can definitely tell it's bigger, which kind of leads me to wonder how the battery life's going to be.
It's 2 inches bigger, but with modern batteries, it should be even better than the regular Switch.
2 inches, when you're talking about a handheld, is a pretty significant increase. Plus, I like the way the controllers magnetically connect, which I think
there's been a lot of complaining about that actually, because people are really, really concerned about those magnets losing their validity because magnets do degrade over time, and the controller is not being able to lock in place very well after some time.
Well, it looks like it looks like there's a little chip that it locks into, so it still kind of locks a little bit, but it's also magnetic. And I've had things that have attached that way before and never had any issues with it. Maybe over 50 years from now, they might not lock as well.
People are talking about between 3 and 5 years by most experts, saying it could be an issue. And I agree, knowing technology, that could become an issue. That's the only thing people are complaining about, though. And if that's the one they're complaining about, that's really good.
But I did see so it's going to be a lot more powerful, which is good. But the caveat there is that from what I've read and from what I've heard, that graphical power is still only about the equivalent of a PS4.
Yeah, it's still behind the times.
It's still not going to be like a PlayStation 5 in your hand, which is fine because that's never been Nintendo. And I have just a regular OLED Switch, and I've never once ever said, "Man, the graphics on this game are horrible." I mean, there are
I
a few
have.
games. There are a few games that I have seen, like I think it was Mortal Kombat 11 or something like that, was atrocious on the Switch, but I never played it on the Switch. So, but
They
like when I play
have.
like a Mario game, I'm not like I'm impressed by the graphics on a Mario game or the Zelda games, like Breath of the Wild. Beautiful. The game is beautiful. Tears of the Kingdom, same thing. Beautiful.
Yeah,
So
I kind of lost faith in Nintendo after the Wii U. I bought that one, and it was fun for about 6 months to a year, and I lost all interest in it
oh,
and sold
dude,
it.
my daughter still has a Wii U to this day. She got it for her 6th birthday, and she still busts it out every now and then and plays it. That thing's kind of nice.
Yeah,
I
I
still like
wasn't
the
too
Wii U.
impressed. I thought it was too gimmicky. So
Yeah,
I'm more of a hardcore gamer back then anyway. So I was in my
it's
PlayStation 2 and 3 and all that.
it's the predecessor. It's the gateway between the Wii and the
It is.
Switch. Which
Nintendo went very gimmicky when they went to the Wii or
see
the regular Wii, and I didn't really like that.
the Wii. I love the Wii.
They just went too
See
gimmicky with it, and it didn't sit with me well.
but it worked. Like the whole like control, the way the controllers worked, and you having to actually move to play it, and like I actually really liked the Wii. That was
I think
it's one of my favorite Nintendo systems
one of my
outside of the
favorite
Super Nintendo.
my favorite one outside of Super Nintendo was the GameCube.
See, in the GameCube, to me, I did like some of the games on the GameCube, but it seems to me like the Wii U of the era. It was just the gateway to get you from one
There was
system
no
up to the
motion
next.
controls or anything like that, and some of the best games I ever played from Nintendo were on that system. Like that's the system that really got into Mario Party.
No, Mario Party was Nintendo 64, man. The
I'm saying
first three
it's what
Mario
really
Party
came
1, 2,
into
and
it.
3.
As it really came into it. The versions on the the GameCube were by far my favorites.
See, my
And
favorites
Super
were
Monkey
always
Ball and all that kind of stuff was just a blast. And my favorite golf game of all time was on the Wii or the GameCube.
okay. There were some good games on the GameCube. We'll get there. We're
Yeah.
not too far out of away from GameCube. That was a good system, but it was another one of those that kind of had lackluster sales. It wasn't, it was just like an in between system. Like a lot of the games, like the big party games, like when you think of all the best Mario games, you don't really think Super Mario Sunshine. I like it. I thought it was a great game. I thought it was fun, but it's not like one of the games that you think of when you think of Mario. I don't know. I don't know.
Mm,
But the Switch 2
it's coming.
does look good. There's not a ton of information yet. They're supposed to unveil more. I think it was like March 3rd. I think is when they're going to do like a whole thing about it. It's supposed to be out this year, they said. We'll see. I hope so. I'm going to get one. I know I'm going to get one. Switch is pretty big in our house. We were actually talking about this earlier. My stepson has my old Switch. My other stepson has his own Switch. My daughter has her own Switch. And then I have my OLED Switch. So we have 4 Switches in our house. And we all play them pretty regularly, except for my daughter. She doesn't play hers that much, but every now and then. I have yet to meet a single person who will ever beat my daughter in Mario Kart, though.
I
That is
was
the one game.
a pro at that game a
No,
long time ago.
I
A long time
thought
ago,
I was.
not now.
Listen, I thought I was a pro at that game too, and my daughter will mop the floor with me. That is the one game that I will not play with her because I cannot beat her at it, and it drives me insane.
Oh, so the GameCube actually outsold the Wii U by 7 million units, but
Yeah.
it was by far not their best-selling system.
No. Like I said, it was just another one of those like.
The funny thing
gateway
is that
systems.
like I'm looking at the top selling game systems of all time, and Nintendo DS is the number 2 top selling system of all time across all of them.
Nintendo DS had a really, really long shelf life, though.
And Switch being number 3.
Yep.
PlayStation 2 is the number 1 best selling of all time.
Yep.
And then
Believe that.
right behind Nintendo's 3 right there, the Game Boy Color is PlayStation 4.
Mhm.
So that makes sense. Yeah, and the thing is about the Switch as well, why another reason I want to get it is so that my girlfriend can play with her son who has one, and he's out in the Philippines, so that's another big reason for it. And I can play with her, so I don't know. I'll have to think about
do that with the Switch too.
Maybe. Like I said, maybe.
Backwards compatibility, man, it's huge. That's the one reason why the PS3 is not on any of the best-selling lists, because even though it was a really good system and it had really good games on it, unless you were lucky enough to get a Generation 1, it wasn't backwards compatible. So, like, you couldn't really play much.
Mm.
So,
I think
that's what drove everybody crazy.
I think making the Switch 2 backwards compatible was a brilliant move and much needed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason
Very,
why I would
very
actually
smart.
consider even getting it.
And that's why a lot of people will get it. Because, like, for me, on launch, it's really hard to buy a new system that's not backwards compatible because on launch, it's got like 10 games. And maybe one or two of them are ones that you're going to be interested in. So it's like, why would I buy a whole new system for like 2 games? But if you make it backwards compatible, then it's like, okay, well, I can still play all of these games and, the 2 games I want to play.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Very smart. Very smart on Nintendo's part.
Nintendo's still keeping it kicking, so good for them. I will never complain about having more systems on the market.
Except for that we got to buy them.
Yeah, that's the only thing I complain about, because I do not have a console right now. I have a PlayStation 4, but it's still being held hostage, and I got to get it back.
I mean, you kind of do. You got your PC, which in your Xbox, account, you got the Xbox account, so you can play live
most of them.
A lot of games through the.
And I have an Xbox controller now from my PC, so.
Me too.
I have actually my gaming laptop, which I just use when I travel, and then my desktop that I use at home. So, in my week, I have to move for work. I have to be in Riverside on March 17th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a meeting with my boss this last Tuesday, and he said, "I tried, Joe, but the union's not gonna pay for your move. They won't do it." So I had a really big fit during that meeting, saying, "I know I can name 13 people right now who the union completely paid for their entire move, plus the first 3 months of their living there. So why is IT not on that list?"
If they're making you do this, then they should.
It was an optional. It was optional. It was a promotion, and I didn't have to take it. So that's what they're getting at. But of those 13 people, 11 of them was optional too.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense why they're going to give me the shaft on this, especially I'm moving to an expensive area, and I don't have the $4,000 right now I need to move.
Yikes.
I just don't, and I have to come up with that in a month and a half. So it's a very, very sore spot with me right now.
Gonna have to tighten the belt.
Yeah, a lot.
Find some kids to claim on your taxes.
Mine are too old for that now. Yeah, and I owe taxes every year. I'm right in that bracket where I have to owe, and it's ridiculous. And I get a ton taken out. I'm not going to get into that details. But anyway, so that's been a huge stress, and it's going to be a huge stress for me for the next month and a half until I get things figured out and actually am able to move. But my job had a massive cyber attack yesterday. We were supposed to be off work at 3 o'clock, and it turned into a day where I didn't get off work until 7, almost 7. Because I'm the head of cybersecurity with the entire union. And thankfully, though, they did not get into anything other than one of our offshoot virtual machine servers that we use just for backing up everything else. They couldn't get into any of our backups, so they were able to get on the server, and that was it. They tried for about 20 minutes, brought down 2/3 of our servers, and then tried ransoming, saying that they had a bunch of data. But when I discovered they only stole 115 kilobytes of data, which is not even enough for a WordPad document.
Yeah, you didn't get nothing.
They got nothing. So my boss was asking me, "Do we want to, talk to them about this?" I said, "No, they got nothing. They have no ground to sit on. We're already fixed. We fixed our machines today. Everything's back up and running. So there's absolutely no reason to even give them time of day. But the only thing that we have to know is how they got in. They use the contractor's login information somehow. So that's going to be fun coming up in the next couple of weeks, is trying to figure out how they got into our system."
That's when you look at them and be like, "I just worked really hard and saved you from a cyber attack. You sure you don't want to cover my travel expense or my moving expenses?"
Right. See, all the work I've been doing for the union since I started, we had no cybersecurity. We had a firewall. That was it. Ugh. And if I wasn't here and I didn't put all these measures into place, they would have gotten everything.
Oh yeah.
As it stands, they got into one of our machines.
An amateur can get through a firewall.
As it stands, they couldn't get anything because we had too many protections in place. So, yeah, I'm going to have a talk with my main boss this week and see if I can't get it, because I really need the assistance really bad. So we'll see. And then all I did other than that I can remember was pretty much play Icarus with my boys and by myself here and there when my boys weren't on.
If the stupid server will work.
Yeah, that's one of the big things. They were bad about it this week.
So I was playing earlier today with Rook, and I shared my screen with him, and he saw it, and it was at least 10 times worse than when you saw it. Like, it was unplayable. Like, I changed a couple of my graphics settings, logged out, logged back in, and it made it at least bearable to the point where I could at least see about 80% of my screen and play enough. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to really play until they patch that and fix it, because the fact that they just released a recent patch to fix something, and they broke the graphical settings for a lot of people to the point where in the game, if you go into a really cold area, your mask will start icing over, and you'll start losing your field of vision. Well, that's happening to people no matter where they are, no matter what their temperature is, and it's like it never goes away. It's just always there, and you just can't see. You can't see to play the game.
Yeah, that's annoying as all get out. You were
And
talking about that
they
last night.
need to fix something. They need to, like, even if they go in temporarily until they can figure out how to fix it and turn that setting off
Mm-hmm.
to where that, that visual effect doesn't happen anymore. Dude, they need to do something, because it's like unplayable when it does that. And it's weird because I went into some of my own save games, no problem. I went into our other server, like our other prospect on our server, no problem.
It's just that one prospect.
That one prospect can't play. It's
Prospect
like
and
almost,
Icarus is like a world, just a new world that you go into.
yeah. It's like basically the map you're playing on.
Right.
And you can set it up to where you can have, like, there's 3 different maps you could play on. There's Olympus, there's the River Styx basically, and then there's Prometheus. Prometheus being like a volcanic planet that's like super hard that we haven't tried on yet, but like, yeah, it's just the one. And it's so weird. But yeah, hopefully they fix it soon, because that's driving me insane.
Me and
Rook
Archon
didn't have a problem.
started Styx last night, and that was interesting. It's an interesting map. It's gonna be fun.
I wish we had a Prometheus one though. We should have went to Prometheus, because Prometheus is the only one that's actually different. I mean, this is still the same biomes, and just the map's a little different. But Prometheus
Different
is
animals.
like different. Like, there's completely different, way different creatures. The whole planet is completely different. There's volcanic biomes everywhere, and it's nuts. I tried it once on my own, and it was it's tough. There's these weird little demon dogs. They come in like packs at you. It's rough.
I
Very
think that was the last expansion they released. Actually, was that one?
Yep, it was. That's been me too. I've been playing Icarus, but like I got to the point on our world before we started the Styx one where I couldn't think of what I wanted to build anymore.
Yeah.
So I started playing a few other games. For Christmas, I got The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, the new one that lets you the first Legend of Zelda where you're actually doing a legend as Zelda, and you're actually playing as Zelda trying to save Link. It's different, but it's really fun. It gives me Link to the Past vibes, kind of, the way you play. Like the gameplay and the way the map's set up and what you have to do and stuff. It's just kind of giving me some Link to the Past vibes, which is one of my favorite Zeldas. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. I also started replaying through the Final Fantasy VII remake, the first one, because the second one, Rebirth, releases on PC on the 23rd. And since my TV is always consumed by my kids and they're always on my PlayStation or the Switch or something, and I hardly ever get to play, I figure if I'm going to play through it, the best way to do it is going to be on my PC, because nobody touches that but me.
Yeah, that's one thing about having a PC.
I really want to play Rebirth. I've heard so many people say that that's one of the best games they've ever played. So I really want to play it. So I want to try and get through the remake first, so that when the new one comes out, I can just jump right into it.
My son's a big fan of the remake, but he likes that
so
combat
good.
style, and
The combat style is different, I'll give you that, but the story is just so good, and the graphics, like my wife looked over and she goes, "Oh, what movie are you watching?" And I was like, "I'm playing a game." She's like, "That's a game?" Because the graphics are so good in that game.
I would have gladly
It's
played
amazing.
it if they give you an option to play the original combat system.
There is.
No.
I don't know if there is in Rebirth, but in the first one there is
No.
a turn-based.
It's not turn-based.
It's not the same kind
Not
of turn-based,
even
but it
close.
is.
Not even close. I've tried it. Trust me, I tried it. I actually had that on my PlayStation 4, and I
But
played about 4 hours of it, and I got fed up with it and quit.
But see, your son is also cool like me in the fact that he likes Kingdom Hearts, and it's basically the same kind of combat style as Kingdom Hearts. So I don't mind it.
Bring back turn-based RPGs. Bring them back.
They're a thing of the past, man.
That's why I haven't played too many RPGs, because I get fed up with the combat.
You got turn-based RPGs just make you use. I mean, not turn-based, but the way they are now just make you use like a little bit more of your brain, more reflexes, and less sitting there thinking about what you want to do for 5 minutes.
It was strategy, and I really enjoyed that strategy aspect of it. And I had time to think about my strategy.
Yeah. This gives you less time, that's for sure. But it's still, the fighting in this game still requires an insane amount of strategy. You can't just button mash.
And like I said, I played it for 4 hours. Was not a fan. I wanted it. I really wanted to get into it. Really wanted to like it, because I love Final Fantasy VII so much. But
so good,
I couldn't do it. Not my cup of tea.
That sucks.
I was thinking earlier, like, since we've been doing gaming through the ages, when are we ever gonna do PC? Or is that even gonna be possible?
PC will have. I mean, we can fit it in. Just like arcade, we're gonna have to fit that one in somewhere too. And arcade is literally
Probably has to do like arcade, then PC as the last two.
maybe.
Because PC fits in through all the ages, and I have memories from it from my early childhood all the way up till now.
Yeah. Same with arcade. I mean, that fits in a huge area
Well,
as well.
arcade, yeah, it does. It really, really does. But it doesn't really fit into modern era as much. Nowadays, it's all about
Right.
tickets and stuff like that. So, and gimmick machines.
Right.
So what else have you been up to, man?
I got addicted to a television show called Suits.
Oh,
I
I
know
know
I'm
that.
way
Yep.
behind the time. I know I'm way behind the time, but like I was flipping through looking for something to watch one day because I was just bored, and it's like I've heard so much about this show. I'm gonna check it out. I watched the first episode, and then I was done with the first season, and I'm like, wow, it's only been 12 hours, and I've finished a whole season of this show. Oh wow, I didn't realize I sat here for so long watching the show. My wife's laughing at me, and now I'm just about on season 3 already, and I've only been watching it for a couple days. It's so good. I love it. I love it.
Nice. I watched an interesting movie with my girlfriend a few days ago. Unsung Hero
Mhm.
from the group King and Country.
Right.
They did
Yeah,
it.
I know
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
pretty good movie. It was a really good movie, actually. I really enjoyed it. I recommended giving it a shot.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a tearjerker if you're that way. It didn't even get me close, but my dad said that he cried.
Oh,
It was a
okay.
good movie. That's it, man. I've been so
Yeah,
busy with
same.
work and so busy with everything else. I just haven't had time to do much other than play Icarus and watch a few YouTube videos here and there.
Yeah, my weekends are right now all about football.
Yeah, we're almost done with that.
We're
Getting
recording on
closer.
Saturday night this week because just because of scheduling and things like that. We're recording Saturday night, and I'm
Yeah.
sitting here thinking, oh, the Lions game's about to start here pretty soon.
I have to be in San Diego Sunday night because I have to cover an event in San Diego Monday. Supposed to have that day off, but they decided to do an event and everyone has to work. That's why they were giving everybody a half day on Friday because we have to work on Monday. And
Yeah, well, how'd that work out?
didn't work out for me. No, IT. What can you do? Let's get into PlayStation.
Let's do it. That's what I've been waiting for since we started. I mean, let's do this.
So PlayStation was released in Japan in 1994 and hit worldwide in 1995, early 1995. I think it was like March. And like I said earlier, PlayStation was the first console of any type to ship over 100 million units, which put PlayStation as a globally recognized brand at that point. And their motto on the original PlayStation was "Play has no limits." I remember
that.
very frequently. Yeah, I remember that
Yep.
vividly. And it launched with a price tag of $299, which is equivalent to $629 in today's funds. And yeah, it was a lot of saving for me. I think I saved for half a year to buy it. I had a car and everything as a kid, so it was tough. PlayStation was discontinued in March of 2006 and was the shortest ran of any PlayStation system.
Yeah.
They did launch a smaller condensed version that was cheaper back in July of 2000 called the PS1, and that ran for 6 years, and it was only $99.
I remember the PS1. I had the original gray brick though.
And then the
And you
PlayStation
gotta-
2 came out, and the whole world
Whole world long. It's mine.
Yeah, that was the
For
system.
good reason. For good reason. Oh man, that was a good system. Anyway, yeah. PlayStation. See, when I got my PlayStation, it was the only Christmas present as a kid that I ever didn't know what it was. I was always not one that could ever be surprised. I always knew what I was getting.
You and I
But
were the
my
same way
mom-
as a kid.
My mom wrapped this one, put it in a box, and then put like 4 or 5 10-pound weights, and then wrap that box, and then put books in it, or put that in another box, put books in it, wrap that. I couldn't even lift this thing. It was just this heavy thing in the corner that I couldn't lift. I couldn't shake. I couldn't sniff anything out on this one. And when I finally opened it,
That's the only time my parents ever surprised me one Christmas was the Super Nintendo. I wasn't allowed to play video games for 3 years, so I went to my cousin's house and played them. So for one, I was not expecting a game system for Christmas at all. And my parents, I was like you. I was not allowed to touch Christmas presents, not allowed to smell them, get anywhere near them because I always figured them out.
mhm.
So they took the Super Nintendo out and found a box that fit the exact shape and size and then filled it with a whole bunch of random knickknacks to make it shake different and have a different weight. Thankfully, that didn't break my Super Nintendo. And they did the same thing, an equal sized box, but they put a Game Boy in there. With that whole big old Game Boy unit that you can put the Game Boy in. It had speakers and a magnifying glass and extra
yeah,
batteries.
that whole thing.
Yeah. I was the most surprised I had ever been on Christmas.
Well, I
It was
remember
amazing.
I opened up my PlayStation and it came with one game. Like I had one game with it and then the demo disc, and it wasn't Final Fantasy VII. I didn't get that with
Oh,
it.
I bought that. It's the second I bought my PlayStation.
Well, I was only 11,
Yeah,
so
true. I was 16.
I was only 11 at the time. So I played the demo disc like crazy because I had a couple of the games on my list on it,
I forgot all about
and
those demo days.
and I played the demo of Final Fantasy VII over and over and over. And my mom saw how often I played that demo, and like after about a month, she bought me the game so that I could
Nice.
play the whole game. And
Yeah, let's get into some lists, man. We got
let's
a lot
do
to
it.
talk about. Let's talk about Rooks first.
Yeah, let's do Rooks first.
And
Where was his list?
he said he didn't play a lot of PS1. He mostly played in 64 during that time period, but he has a top 5.
Yep.
And I find his list very, very interesting. And if he listens to this show, he'll find mine interesting as well for this reason. So his number 5 is Driver, and I remember that game very, very well. Probably pretty much the only racing game I really played a lot on PlayStation days. I've never been a racing fan, but that's one of the ones I did play. Siphon Filter. That one is his number 4, and I was trying to remember it.
Oh, you don't remember Siphon Filter?
I played it. I know I did. I played it a lot. I just couldn't remember.
It was very Metal Gear Solid like.
Yeah, I didn't really care for Metal Gear Solid during that time
It
frame.
it was like a tactical game, very much like
Yes,
Metal Gear
I
Solid.
remember it now.
Mhm.
Yep. And his number 4. Wait, we're on number 3.
Yep,
Final
number 3.
Fantasy Tactics.
Phenomenal game.
Yes.
Phenomenal game, and I hate myself that I can't put it on my list. But when you hear my list, you'll understand why I couldn't fit it in.
I don't know, man.
There's a couple on my list that you'll be like, really? But when I tell you why, you'll understand why they're on my list.
Okay, well, we'll see. Final Fantasy 7 is his number 2.
Solid game.
It's weird seeing 7 as a number 2 on a PlayStation list, but I get it. And his number 1 makes sense for who Rook is. Metal Gear Solid.
Yep. Also a very no pun intended solid game. Yeah, it may be a short list, but it's a good list. I like his list.
I wasn't into Metal Gear Solid. I did play it, but I just really wasn't into it at that time.
Oh,
Nowadays,
dude.
I would have loved it, but back then, nah.
There was one boss on that game that I was stuck on for so long, and then when I figured out the trick to beating him, I was so mad. So mad. There's a boss in the game. Gosh, I can't remember what his name was, but he could predict your every move. Everything you did, he could always predict your move, and he was always one step ahead of you, and he always killed you. But the trick to it is if you plugged in the second controller, he couldn't read your movements because you were playing on the second controller and not the first controller, and you could beat him. And that's how you were supposed to beat him, is by plugging in the second controller and using the second controller. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? For days I spent trying to beat that boss. Days. Until I figured that out. Ugh.
Let's talk about your list, man.
My list. Oh, you want me to go first? Okay.
Yep.
All right. As true Archon fashion, I have honorable mentions. I have to have honorable mentions, and there had to be 4 because they had to make my list. Number 4 honorable mention: Xenogears.
Solid game.
Very, very good RPG. You have these giant mechs you get to go in, and it's so much fun. Second honorable mention, or number 3, Wild Arms. Another RPG. Very good series. I love all the Wild Arms games, but Wild Arms 1 was my favorite. Number 2 on my honorable mentions, Legends of Legaia.
Yes.
One of the best combat systems of
Oh my
any
gosh,
game.
I didn't put that on my list.
The combos that you could come up with were just so good. And then the last honorable mention that I thought of in the middle of the show, the last honorable mention that I thought of right in the middle of the show, and I had to put it on here, Cool Borders 2.
Oh, yep.
It was another one that was on the demo disc. I played it so much.
I remember that one. So the funny thing is, we were talking about the 2 games that could be considered as almost sports.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
Yeah, mine is very similar to that, just without snow.
Oh, yeah. I think I know what yours is.
Yeah.
I have a feeling yours is going to be a Tony Hawk game.
You might be right.
Anyway, so into the top 10. My number 10, this is a guilty pleasure game for me. I played this game so much I'm surprised the disc even worked after I was done with it. It's a game called Pa Rappa the Rapper.
Oh gosh, I know that game. Oh, I hated that game.
That's the one I was talking about that I said you probably never really played.
Oh, I did.
But,
I played it.
Oh, I loved that. I still know the songs and the button combinations in my head because I played it so much. I loved that game. It was amazing. Number 9. This game holds a special place in my heart because I went on vacation with one of my friends, one of my best friends growing up, to his aunt's house in Colorado for it was like a 2 or 3 week vacation or something. And we went to the store and we bought a bunch of games. And we came back and we would sit there and just play games all day long. And the one that we played the most was a shooting game called Point Blank.
Know it.
And
that was actually a really popular game.
We played that game so much. Again, I'm surprised the light gun even worked because, I mean, we were sitting there holding the gun sideways and like rapid firing the triggers and trying to like blow things. Like,
but I thought
especially
Point
like,
Blank was PlayStation 2.
No, Point Blank was PlayStation 1, and it like it had like bonus rounds where you'd have to like try and blow up a car and stuff like that. So we would be like, oh, we played the snot out of that game. So that one holds a special place in my heart. Number 8, another game that holds a special place in my heart because when I was really young, I used to go to my brother's house. Like when we first came out to Michigan, I would go over to my brother's house and he had a PlayStation. And one of the few games that he had that was any good was Twisted Metal 2.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And we would sit there and play that game together. And me and his...
That was on my list until I remembered 2 other games and I had to knock it off.
Oh, it has to be there. It has to be there. Because I really wish they would make a PS5 version of a Twisted Metal game that's good, because I would play it like crazy right now.
They need to get back to the old mechanics of the game.
Yeah, dude, it could be so good if they made like a new version of it. Like it could be the next Rocket League, like they could do e-tournaments with this game because it is so much fun. Number 7, Final Fantasy 9.
Okay.
Final Fantasy 7 holds a special place in my heart, but story-wise, Final Fantasy 9 is probably my favorite Final Fantasy out of all of them.
I played 8 and 9 because of 7, and I thought 8 had probably the best romance of any game I've ever played, but it was death by menu in that game.
Yeah.
So 9 I was iffy about, and I did play about half of it before I just got tired of it and quit. But
9 is my favorite. It's the one that it's the Final Fantasy game that I personally have beaten the most because I really like the story.
You're not alone.
The main
There's
character,
a lot of people that love that game.
Yeah, the main character's awesome. The little mage and the Vivi, the little black mage in the game, one of the most lovable characters in all of Final Fantasy. Steiner, one of the most hated characters. That's one of your party members of all time. Like, it's really good. I really love that one. Number 6 is a game that terrified the crap out of me, but I could not stop playing it. Silent Hill.
Oh yeah. That was a scary one. That was a really scary one.
Oh yeah, Silent Hill 2 was a better game. Like it had a better story and it was a better game. But Silent Hill 1, to me, holds a lot of like nostalgia because I just remember sitting there playing. Like I started playing that game and I couldn't go to sleep, and I ended up playing it all night long because I could not go to sleep because it terrified me so much. Every time like the world would shift, you were just like, oh no, oh what's happening? It's like you just get terrified. Number 5 was a game called Alundra. This was another game that we picked up on that trip that I was like, what the heck is this? And it ended up being one of my favorite games. It has a very similar story to Link to the Past.
I had to look that one up.
The gameplay of it is very similar to Link to the Past as well.
And I did beat this one. I completely
It is very good. Yeah, it's a very good game. I really enjoyed it. Number 4, Metal Gear Solid.
Okay.
We've talked about that one.
Pretty solid, man. Pretty solid.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice. Number 3, they actually remade this. They did a remaster of this game recently, and I love it. It's called Medieval. Yep. I love it. You're this little skeleton dude, this little skeleton knight, and you're like walking around and you're like having to collect different weapons and different things to like beat the big boss and stuff, and love it. And the remaster is actually like spot on, same exact game, just better graphics. So they did a good job with it. Number 2, it's weird seeing this at number 2 on a list, but Final Fantasy VII is my number 2.
You and Rook.
Yeah, number 2. Not number 1, Joe. Number 2,
yeah.
Believe it or not.
I believe it.
Game does hold a very special place in my heart, but not as much as my number 1, Legend of the Dragoon.
Yes, I know that game.
That is, hands down, one of my favorite RPGs I've ever played.
I like Legaia a little bit more.
Oh, I would if I had a copy of Chrono Trigger and a copy of Legend of Dragoon sitting in front of me, Chrono Trigger would go back on the shelf, and I would start playing Legend of Dragoon right now.
That's where we're the exact opposite. I would
Oh,
be
Legend of Dragoon was
engrossed
so
in Chrono
good.
Trigger. I
I
want to play that
have
game again
Legend
so
of.
bad.
I actually have the remake, well, not remake, but the version that came on the PlayStation Network and stuff like that. I have that downloaded on my PlayStation 5. It's one of the games on there that I've told the kids that they can never delete. It must stay on there at all times. Love that game. So good.
So before I get into my list, and is there anything else you want to say about yours?
No, that's my list.
Dude, you have a really solid list. I can agree with like nine out of 10 of those.
You didn't
Really
like
good list.
Parappa? You didn't like Parappa?
Nope. Hated that game.
I love that.
I
love
played
that
it
game.
quite a bit with my buddies, but I did not like it. My first jaunt into video game development was during the PlayStation era. So there's 3 games that I was a developer on for PlayStation, and one of them is a game called Warpath Jurassic Park. It was a complete flop. It was the first PlayStation game I ever worked on. I started out as a tester, went to designer on it.
I thought you told me the first one you worked on was God of War.
No, that was the third.
Huh.
And then I was working for a company I worked for Activision first, which we were working on Quake 3 Arena. That was my first title ever worked on. And then I went for a company called Black Ops Entertainment, who was based in Santa Monica, where I was living, and they put me on Warpath Jurassic Park. They wanted me as a tester at first, get into it, and then they put me in as a designer, a level designer for it. Okay. And then they had me jump on to Tomorrow Never Dies, James Bond game. So I worked on that for about 4 months, and then I got hired by SCEA, Santa Monica, and worked on God of War. Those are the 3 I worked on. But outside of that, I wish I would have remembered Legaia, because that would have been perfect for my list. It would have probably replaced my number 8. And I'm curious if you're going to even remember my number 8.
Of course I will.
Most likely. I have no doubt you probably will. You probably played it. My number 10 was the one fighting game I was obsessed with on PlayStation, and that was Soul Edge.
Soul Edge, okay.
It was the weapon combat, like Tenchu, but with weapons.
Gotcha.
I loved the story of that game. I got very, very good with it. Loved it. Number 9 was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Yep. Knew it. That's the one that spoiler alert, it very well could end up on my Nintendo 64 list.
We had ourselves in the game, so you could actually make your character, and mine looked just like me. I remember that New Year's Eve, we got drunk with our friends and we're playing that. And then we played it all New Year's Day. It was great. Loved that game.
I remember the school level, and I remember the infinite glitch where me and my buddy John figured out how to score, like, I think we got like 4 or 8 million points or something like that in one trick, because we just would do this like infinite loop around the pool and up on the ledge and then down in the pool. And it was just, we'd see who could get the biggest trick with the most points all the time.
And that was before they could update games. So there was a glitch like that, you had it.
Oh yeah.
My number 8 is Vagrant Story.
That is a very good game.
I loved it. And there was something, I was trying to remember like what in particular that caught me with it. And it was something about one of the mechanics.
That one was a like tactics type game, wasn't it?
It was very similar to Tactics, yes.
That's what I thought. It was like a...
It was so good.
Baldur's Gate type game.
The story gripped me hardcore, and I loved it.
I remember it had a very good game.
Yeah, and it had a
very good story.
Really big case that it came in. It was great. I almost forgot about it. I played the death out of that. One of the ones that I played not out of and beat several times over, even though it was very, very difficult, was Tenchu, Stealth Assassins.
Wait, which number are we on right now?
We are currently on 7.
So Vagrant Story was the one you didn't think I'd remember?
Yeah, well, no, I wasn't sure if you would. Because a lot of people don't remember that one.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah, my number 7 is Tenchu. Stealth Assassins, the ninjas. And you had to be a ninja in stealth and everything like that. That was my espionage game that I was obsessed with.
Okay.
None of the other Tenchus I played, a lot of the other ones after that weren't as good as that one. My number 6, and the funny thing about Tenchu Stealth Assassins, I was actually learning ninjutsu, Iga ninjutsu, while I was playing that game.
Okay.
Number 6 is Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey.
Oddworld games were good.
That platform so much. That platformer was so good. It was so weird, so funny, so interesting that I was obsessed with it. So I had a friend, before I get my top 5 here, when I was 18 or 17 or 18, he worked for one of those toy companies, now out of business. I can't think of the name of it.
Toys R Us?
It might have been.
KB Toys.
It was KB Toys, I think.
Okay.
But he was working for them, and he would constantly come home with PlayStation games that he said were free. Turns out he had stolen them as they were coming in through shipping. But one of the games he brought that he wound up giving me because I was so obsessed with it was a game called Monster Rancher.
Oh, yeah, the Pokemon type game you were talking about?
Yep. And what was cool about it is you would load CDs, music CDs, movies, games into your PlayStation, and it would summon a monster out of that you could keep. And they had these ultra rare monsters that were in very particular CDs. I remember going to a music store just to find a particular music CD just so I could put it in Monster Rancher. Never listened to the music, didn't like it. I bought it just for that game. I played the living crap out of that game. It was unreal. My top 5, I probably put in 400 or 500 hours each in these games, if not more. Monster Rancher was one of them. Number 4, my son would kick my butt if I did not put this in my list, which he'd be absolutely right to do so. It's a game called Unholy War. And most people don't remember it, but it was an RTS game between two factions.
Don't remember it.
You had like the aliens and the mechs. And I had never, ever lost a match in Unholy War. I had my best friend in college. Him and I played probably 4 or 5 matches a day, and just so he could try beating me, and never did. My son could never beat me. No one has ever beat me in this game. Whether I play mechs or if I play as the creatures. But the creatures, my son refused to let me play anymore because there's a little...
Okay, I know what it is. I'm looking at it. I see what it is.
There's a unit called piranhas in the beasties, and I was unstoppable. I could beat every unit with them.
Okay.
What was cool about Unholy War is it had an RTS-style map of hexagons that you were controlling the board, resources, things like that. But when you fought your opponent, you actually went into a battleground and actually physically fought them with your unit into a little death match.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing to do with stats or anything like that. It was just how good you were with the unit and how you played it.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
Yeah,
I remember that game. I didn't play it a whole lot, but I do remember it.
It's more of an obscure game. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's one of my all-time favorites. It was my favorite RTS of all time. My number 3 is Final Fantasy Tactics, the exact same as Rook. I was obsessed. So here's the story about this one. I was living on my own with my friend. I can't think. Why am I so bad with names and everything when I'm on recording?
Wow, hopefully he's not listening.
He wouldn't. He was one of my best friend through high school, my early 20s, and we were dirt poor. I was working, he was not. I remember him eating ketchup for dinner a few nights because he had nothing.
Ooh, fun.
But we went and rented a game called Final Fantasy Tactics. I got so obsessed with it, I was asking my parents for money to rent this game every week. I rented it for 3 months solid before I was able to buy it.
I was going to say, you could have just bought it. It would have cost you less money.
But it was more money all at once that I didn't have at that time. I was 19 or 18. I had no money.
Right.
Oh, I did everything in that game. I unlocked every single secret. I got all
Cloud?
the secret characters. Oh, yeah. Heck yeah, I got Cloud.
And Omni Slash?
Got them all. I did everything in that game.
Yeah.
I unlocked every single job possible. It was so good. My number 2 is Monster Rancher 2. It was leaps and bounds better than the first one. Final Fantasy VII is my number 1, and that should be no duh for everybody listening. It was my number 2 of my favorite games of all time. I was completely obsessed with it to the point where I had Cloud at 999 everything. 99 all stats, 999 everything.
Mm-hmm.
I could solo the last boss with just Cloud, and it was unreal. It was...
Yeah, I put in... I couldn't even tell you how many hours. Like, I know one of my playthroughs on that game was like 96 hours or something like that. Got the golden chocobo and everything, like...
All the old ultimate weapons, including what's-her-face's ultimate before she dies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at that time, I had that entire game memorized, line by line. I knew it. Did every side quest, did everything in that game.
Or depending on which, like, version you played, she was either Aerith or Aerith.
Yeah.
But, yeah, dude, one of my favorite things about that game was all the games inside the games. And then once you did the little mini games, then you could unlock them and play them at the Golden Saucer. And like the whole snowboarding game in there. Oh, I played that snowboarding game. I was
obsessed with chocobo racing and breeding because I wanted my golden chocobo.
Yeah, I did all the chocobo breeding.
Because you needed the golden chocobo to get the best ultimate in the game.
Knights of the Round, of course.
Yep. Had to get Knights of the Round.
Get Knights of the Round and Mimic, and then everything else is just cake. But a
lot of the big games like God of War, I couldn't put on my list because I was a developer on it.
God of War was PlayStation 2.
Oh, that's what I meant, yeah. That would be PlayStation 2.
So you couldn't put it on the list anyway.
We were working on it during the PlayStation 1 era.
Right.
So it would come out with PlayStation 2. That's where I got confused in my mind. Tomb Raider is one of the ones that was a big franchise that came out in PlayStation days that I played, but
I
nah.
I like the Tomb Raider games, but the controls were so clunky. It was so hard to play. Crash Bandicoot, I thought really hard. Wait, yeah, the
Which
first
one
Crash was
though?
on. I think only the first one was on PS1, right?
There was
Or
3
was
crashes.
yeah, but I think the third one was on PS2.
I know they had 3 Crash Bandicoot games.
There's Crash Team Racing,
But
Crash 2,
that
Crash
was
3, Crash Warped.
PlayStation's. Yeah, that was PlayStation's Mario.
Yeah, I mean he wasn't as good as or Sonic.
There was
Like he
actually
didn't
5 Crash Bandicoot games for PlayStation 1.
for PS1.
Yeah, but it
Oh,
was like Crash Team Racing.
yeah.
There was Warped, Crash Bandicoot, Crash Bash, and Crash Bandicoot 2.
Yeah. Then there was, I mean, there was a lot. There was like, gosh, I'm getting confused on PS1 and PS2 because I know some
Yeah,
of
it's
them were
tough, isn't it?
like I don't
A lot of people were
think
probably
Jack and
wondering.
Daxter, Spyro was a good game.
Yep, another big one for PlayStation and like key characters. A lot of people probably wondering why Chrono Cross isn't on my list because I hated that game.
Yeah, Chrono Cross isn't a very good game. That's why it's not on the list.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be like a successor to Chrono Trigger, but the combat system was completely different. The story was just
It's a sequel.
barely
Like it follows
mentioned
the
the first
story.
game.
Yeah.
It didn't really follow the
It's
story.
just
It was based in the world, and that was it.
yeah, it's not that great.
Gran Turismo made its introduction in
Yep.
PlayStation.
And that was huge.
Yep.
Yeah, Gran Turismo was a huge game back then.
Did you ever play Ape Escape?
Yeah. Ape Escape games were fun.
They were.
I think I wanna say
Wipeout was a lot of fun.
wasn't the first Grand Theft Auto on PS1?
I
know-
don't know.
Yeah, because Grand Theft Auto 3 and like Vice City and all those were the first ones that came on PS2. So I think the first one was on PS1. I mean, a lot of the big franchises and big games that we all know today started back on PS1.
Yeah, Grand Theft Auto came out for PlayStation later in the PlayStation lifespan.
Right.
Late
That's what
90s.
I thought.
Yeah.
But I didn't start playing them until PS2 though, until like I think it was Grand Theft Auto 3 was the first one I played, and then Vice City,
The first
And
one I ever
then-
played was 4.
San Andreas. Really?
Yep.
Oh, dude, the old ones were so good, especially like Vice City and San Andreas. They were some of
I
my
have
favorite ones.
every single
But-
one of them on my Steam.
Nice. You
And
should play.
I've only played 4 and 5. I never beat any of them.
I don't think I've ever played 5.
The story of that one's fantastic. The whole robbery system was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I could go golfing on my character to build his strength and dexterity stats.
Nice.
I just never beat it. I got wrapped up in doing online, and then other games came into it, and I just never did the final mission.
I mean, there's so many games that I struggled hard to even narrow it to 14. Like I said, Tactics didn't even make my list, which is surprising because I absolutely love Tactics. It was one of
Yeah,
my favorite games of all time.
Those 10 games sucked my life away for many years. They're the ones I
Same.
always went back to and played over and over and over again, especially Monster Rancher.
Some of the games just had nostalgic value to me, and I had to put them on there above other games. But like, PlayStation was a big RPG era for me. Like, there was a lot, like Xenogears, Wild Arms, Legends of Legaia, Final Fantasy 9. I didn't really care for 8 that much, but I loved 7. I loved 9. I loved Tactics.
8 had an amazing story. It was just that the menus killed it.
Yeah, there's so many menus. It was so convoluted. It did introduce one of my favorite things in the Final Fantasy series, though, which is the Tetramaster card game. That first started in 8, but the version in 9 was better. So
I'm actually surprised that Rook didn't mention Breath of Fire 4.
he mentioned it when we were talking about Super Nintendo that he played some of the ones on PlayStation, but like Breath of Fire 4 wasn't the best in the series.
So,
Not in my opinion, it wasn't.
yeah, Metacritic has a list of PlayStation 1 games based off Metascore. Do you have any idea what the top 5 of those games are based on the Metascore?
Top 5.
The number one game has a Metascore of 98 out of 100.
Final Fantasy 7.
No, surprisingly, it's not even on that top 10. It was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
I believe it, yeah. Like I said, I played that one on on Nintendo 64. I didn't really play it that much on PlayStation. It was mainly on Nintendo 64.
Final Fantasy 9 is the only one that made the top 10. No, sorry, 7 is, top 10, and that had a score of 94. That was number 4.
That's what I'm telling you. Final Fantasy 9 is a sleeper.
And I do not agree with the
people
number
sleep on that game.
5 at all, which is Chrono Cross. Final Fantasy 7 had a Metascore of 92 at number 13.
Still not bad. Anything over 90 is pretty good.
Yeah, and there's several that are over 90.
So what are the top 5 then?
Top 5 is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is number 1. Tekken 3 is number 2 at 96. Gran Turismo, number 3 at 96. Okay. Final Fantasy 9 at 94. And Chrono Cross at 94.
Huh. Okay.
Followed by Metal Gear Solid, Gran Turismo 2, Street Fighter, Wipeout 2 or XL. And Vagrant Story was actually number 11.
Nice. Yeah, I think other than Chrono Cross, I think all the rest of them deserve to be up there.
What's funny
Chrono
is
Cross isn't a bad game unless you're a fan of Chrono Trigger.
The bottom 5 is hilarious. The worst rated PlayStation game of all time is Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle with a Metascore of 25. Kiss Pinball is the next one. HBO Boxing, Mortal Kombat Special Forces.
Oh, that is a terrible game.
Yes.
That was a terrible game.
Atrocious games.
All of their spin-offs were terrible games.
What makes me really curious is where Warpath wound up, because it has to be near the bottom. I'm looking for it. I actually wrote the strategy guide for that game, so I'm really want to get a copy of that strategy guide.
Yeah. If you wrote it, you should be able to.
I'm not even seeing it so far. It's not at the bottom, which is surprising, because it was one of the worst rated games. The worst rated game I ever worked on. It was basically Dinosaurs meets Mortal Kombat with finishers.
Oh, so like not Bloody Roar. What's that game?
I know what you're talking about.
Primal Rage.
Primal Rage, yep.
Yep, the dinosaur Mortal Kombat game. At the
same time, which pretty much killed our game.
Yeah, Primal Rage. That game was actually kind of fun.
It was.
I remember that game.
I played that in the arcades like crazy. It's probably in my top 10 or at least top 15 arcade games.
Did you ever play Bloody Rage?
Yes.
Or Bloody Roar, I mean?
Bloody Roar, yep.
That game was fun too. You can like transform into the animals. Oh, that game was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't even see it on my list unless it was so bad it didn't make it, because not every game is on this list. I'm going to just look it up here.
I also played Diablo 1 on the PS1.
Warpath.
It wasn't as good on PlayStation as it was on
Jurassic
computer, though.
Park. No Metascore.
Yeah, it was that bad.
No one rated it.
Over.
Yeah, that's the black mark on my gaming history.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, that was our PlayStation. We're going to be talking about N64 on next week's episode. So, check that out. We'll have Rook back with us.
Yeah, that one's going to be another one that's going to be really tough for me because there were a lot of really good N64 games.
That's going to be easier. I think my top 10s going forward, other than when we do PC, that's when it's get very, very difficult for me.
Yeah, that's going to be next to impossible.
Yeah. Was PlayStation and SNES. Those are my hardest ones for me. But doing the other ones probably be a lot easier.
Not me. PS2 is going to be hard. PS4 is going to be hard. N64 is going to be hard. GameCube, that one will probably be pretty easy. We will be close. That one, I think I could do Wii.
What's funny is I think Mario Golf is going to make my list. I'm not sure yet.
On 64?
Mm-hmm. I love that game.
It is a good game.
All right, guys.
If you want to find out what makes our list, you'll have to tune in next week.
Exactly. For episode number 66. Same bat channel.
Yeah, exactly. You ruined my catchphrase.
Yeah, well, it wasn't yours to begin with anyway.
Fine. Right.
Is there anything else you want to talk about before we call it a night?
No, I'm good.
All right, guys. If you want to reach this show for business, such as advertising, things of that nature, please email us at podcastraw@gmail.com. The best way to get a hold of us, period, you can contact us directly, as well as our message boards, is our Discord. There's a whole bunch of different chats in there, mostly text-based. Just go in, have some fun, nerd out with people. Discord.gg/raw podcasts, RAWPODCASTS. Our X is at Podcast Raw. Our Facebook is Raw Podcasts. Our Instagram
is Raw Podcast 1.
You can follow us individually as well. I am at The Wigit, THEWIGIT, everywhere.
And you can find me at pretty much all social media as the Archon 606 or on video game platforms as quick QWICK_D_606.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and have a fantastic nerdy week.
Have a great week, guys.